which is Jeremiah reminiscing about his calling. When God first laid upon him what was going to be the purpose and path of his life, to be a prophet in the nation of Judah. And there are some principles in Jeremiah chapter 1 that are critically important, not only to Jeremiah's life, but to our life as believers. And you know, one of my favorite things to do is to look at a passage of Scripture where God deals just one-on-one with somebody. You know, whether it's Jesus encountering, like we looked at a few weeks ago, Zacchaeus, you know, the tax collector, whether it's God dealing, as we looked at a couple weeks ago, Jacob in that kind of wrestling match at midnight. Whenever those one-on-one experiences happen, just a powerful lessons emerge from that. And so we're going to see that here in Jeremiah chapter 1. The word of the Lord came to me saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Ah, sovereign Lord, I said, I do not know how to speak. I am only a child. But the Lord said to me, do not say, I am only a child. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord. Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, now I have put my words in your mouth. And then a few verses later in Jeremiah chapter 1, the Lord declared, today, speaking to Jeremiah, today I have made you a fortified city, an iron pillar, and a bronze wall to stand against the whole land, against the kings of Judah, its officials, its priests, and the people of the land. They will fight against you, but will not overcome you. For I am with you and will rescue you. We're going to unpack that passage a little bit this morning. Let me ask you a question. How many of you all watch The Voice? Yeah, many of you watch The Voice. Absolutely. Well, if you're not familiar with The Voice is a singing competition. And the way in which you kind of make it out of the first round is you come out onto a stage in front of a large studio audience, and of course, it being a top television program, a large national TV audience. And there are 4 celebrity judges from various genres of music, pop music, country, 4 celebrity judges, and they all have their chairs turned around so that the contestant is to their back, is what you're seeing on the screen. And probably kind of the most dramatic moments in The Voice is early in the season when judges are selecting who's going to be on their team. And so here this young man or this young woman walks out on the stage and they just start singing their heart out. And the judges can't see them. Judges don't know what they look like. It's a complete blind audition. And the goal is that at some point during their song, one of those judges is going to hit a big red button, and that chair turns around, and they look then at the person that they have selected, and it means that they automatically are on their team. Now it gets, of course, really interesting when more than one judge hits that approval and selection button and turns around, because then the judges have to vie for that particular contestant. It's pretty dramatic stuff. Someone once said this: a lot of people will spend their lives as if they are on The Voice, constantly seeking and hoping that someone who is significant to them will hit that approval button, turn and look their direction and say, I approve of you and you're on my team. A lot of people will spend their lives hoping that mom or dad will hit that button. A lot of folks will spend their lives hoping a boyfriend or a girlfriend will hit that button. Or a supervisor at work, or a friend will pivot their way, approve of them, look at them, and say, you're on my team. Sometimes, if we're not careful, we think that's the way God operates. It's like we're some contestant on The Voice, and we have to go out and we have to perform for God, so that our performance will be so good that God will hit that approval button, turn our direction, and say, you're on my team. But when we look at Jeremiah chapter 1, one of the first things that jumps out at me from that particular passage is not only how God chose Jeremiah, but when God chose Jeremiah. Because what God says to Jeremiah, he says, I knew you before you were ever born, before you were ever in your mother's womb, I have chosen you. Because here's the first little truth that comes to me in Jeremiah chapter 1. And this is so powerful. We need to hear this. God does not hold auditions. Do you ever think about that? God does not hold auditions. God doesn't say to Jeremiah, God didn't say to Moses, God didn't say to Jacob, God didn't say to anybody whose life he is purposing in all of Scripture, hey, I tell you what, I want to send you out for about a 60 or 90-day trial period. We'll see how you do, and at the end of it, I'll decide whether I will stick with you or not.
No.
Nobody in Scripture ever has to perform for God for them to get his approval. God does not hold auditions. And being New Testament believers, we are convicted of the eternal truth that because of Jesus Christ, we are already approved before God. And so I want it to resonate within us this morning. God doesn't audition you to see if he's going to like you or approve of you or love you. He didn't do that with Jeremiah, and he's not doing that with you or with me. Doesn't mean that we don't try our best for God. It just means we don't have to try out for God. So that's where I begin in this great call narrative of Jeremiah, that God doesn't hold and he doesn't conduct auditions. Something else here in this call narrative of Jeremiah chapter 1 that I think is profoundly important. And that is that Jeremiah's ultimate calling is not doing prophecy, but it is being with God. It's not doing prophecy, but being with God. For God says to Jeremiah on a number of occasions in this opening chapter, we didn't look at all of the verses in Jeremiah chapter 1, but he says repeatedly in Jeremiah chapter 1, for I am with you. And you know what? So many times as believers, we stress over trying to figure out, trying to discern, what is it that I'm supposed to do? And you know what? God's ultimate calling on your life and my life is not about doing anything. It's about being intimately connected with him. And then the doing will happen naturally. If you and I are connected with God, that inflow then will naturally result in an outflow and an overflow, and that's when doing happens. And so Jeremiah's ultimate calling here is not to do prophecy, but to be with God intimately. Several weeks ago, as you know, Amelia and I had the opportunity to go to a Worship Life conference in Tennessee. And the conference pastor that week had a large congregation out in Vegas. And so one morning during the worship service, he delivered a message that, it just kind of reminded me of something that, I'll just be honest with you, I tend to forget. I tend to forget. Now, there's about 600 or 700 people that are in this conference center, in the kind of auditorium, and that are participating in this worship service. And out of those 600 and 700 people, I'd say 90% of the people sitting there were on church staff. So people were either a pastor, people were either a music minister, or they did audio-visual at their church, but they did something vocationally at a local church. So you got a bunch of church staffers out there, a bunch of reverends. And the speaker says this. He says, I want to tell you something this morning. God did not call any of you to do ministry. Now, the group was about as quiet as you are right now. God did not call any of you to do ministry. He said, what God called you for is to be with Him intimately. The ministry is what He does through you. And the proof text that he happened to select to kind of use for his message that morning to underscore that principle was what Jesus Christ said to his disciples there in John chapter 15. What Jesus Christ said to his disciples in John 15 was, the word picture he gave them was, I am the vine and you are the branches. And basically he said, I am the vine, you are the branches, and as long as you stay connected to me, you shall bear fruit, fruit being ministry. But Jesus said this, he said, apart from me, you can do nothing. Thus, any fruit, any ministry that happens is because the vine works through the branch as the branch is connected to the vine. So he said, none of you was called to do ministry. You were called to be intimately connected, branch to vine with God. And then the ministry is what God is going to do through you as a result of that connection. Now, when I think about that, that begins to cause me to recalibrate. And look at what God says to Jeremiah here in Jeremiah chapter 1. That principle is right there. Because God says to Jeremiah, my words will be your words. The way in which Jeremiah puts it, he says, the Lord reached out his hand, he touched my mouth, and he said to me, now I have put my words in your mouth. So what you say will be what I say. My steps will be your steps. You're going to go where I guide you, where I direct you to go. My desire is going to be your desire. And so if you come into church this morning all stressed out about, well, what is it that I'm supposed to do for God? What am I supposed to be doing? Recalibrate and just say, you know what? God calls me to just simply be intimately, inwardly, intentionally connected to Him. And then the doing, the ministry, will be the overflow of that relationship. And that's what's at the core of Jeremiah's calling here. Then there's a third and final, I think, powerful truth here in Jeremiah chapter 1. I once heard a psychologist talk about third words. Third words are however you and I complete the sentence, I am. So whatever you fill in after that is your third word. A lot of us have third words professionally, right? I'm a pastor. I'm a teacher. I'm a manager. I'm a vice president. I'm a sales rep. That's a third word professionally. You know, Jesus had powerful third words. I am the vine. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the resurrection. I am the good shepherd. I'm the narrow gate. And powerful third words that come to the heart of his identity and of his purpose. That's what third words do. And so you and I have a lot of third words. Because of this intimate connection that Jeremiah has with God, it's going to alter his third words. And notice the first one that Jeremiah uses here in Jeremiah 1, when God says, before you were ever born, I knew you and I appointed you to be a prophet to the nations. Jeremiah says, and here's his third word, I am only a child. That's his third word. I am only a child. I can't speak. Enlarge that, I'm unskilled. I'm not the guy for the job. I am only a child. And you know what? So many of us, in the third words that we feed ourselves, are always diminutive, negative, demeaning. A lot of people have a lot of third words. I am not smart, I am not talented, I am unskilled, I can't do this. All of that is third word negative stuff. But because of this intimate connection that God is inviting Jeremiah to have with him, and from that intimate connection is going to come purpose. God will later say in Jeremiah chapter 1, there in verses 18 and 19, he says, basically, Jeremiah, don't ever say, I'm only a child. That is not your third word. That is not who you are. That is not your identity, as I perceive it. And so God gives to Jeremiah some new third words. He says, Jeremiah, you are a fortified city. You are an iron pillar. You are a bronze wall. Now that is a sea change from the self-perceived third word that Jeremiah had used to describe himself. I am a child, a fortified city, iron pillar, bronze wall. God wants to change our third words. God sees us in ways that we often do not see ourselves. And from that connection comes purpose and life and ministry. I had a father, or was reading a father who wrote about his son playing t-ball. Now, when I was growing up, there was no such thing as t-ball. When I was growing up, there was Little League. And, Little League was much tougher than t-ball. T-ball is exactly what it says it is. You take this little plastic ball, you put it on a tee, and, little guys and gals get up, take a swat at it. And, it's the first stage of learning baseball. The first stage of learning baseball. And if you've had kids over the past 15 or 20 years, you're probably familiar with some version of t-ball. And so anyway, this dad was writing about his son playing first season of t-ball, and he said that they're on the way, they're driving to the t-ball practice and the t-ball game, and he said, I'm going over all the rules of baseball. Now when you hit the ball, you want to run to first base. Where's first base? Well, that's, he was explaining all the rules. And he said, and when you get home, that means your team gets a point, and, he said, all of this stuff. Night before and on the drive over to t-ball game. He says, we get to t-ball, and he says, the first thing the coach says at t-ball is, we don't keep score. So nobody wins and nobody loses. Which pretty much let all the air out of the balloon that he had been trying to instill in his son on, how you get from base to base, and if you get home, you get a point, and all this good stuff. So, anyway, he said they ultimately come to realize that there is no scorekeeping in t-ball. And so he said they're on the way home. And the little boy, his son, asked him, he said, well, if you don't keep scoring t-ball, how do I know if I'm winning? How do I know if I'm doing what I'm supposed to do? If everybody's just cycling through and batting and all of that. So the dad said, well, here's what we'll do the next game. He said, every time you do something, You just look my way, and I'm going to give you a thumbs up. That means well done. That means you're doing what you're supposed to do. I'll give you a thumbs up. So he said that was their rule, that was their kind of father-son sign. So he said, next T-ball game comes up. He said, his son gets up, takes a whack at the ball, and off he heads down first base. First place, his son looked. Wasn't at his teammates. Wasn't at his coach. But was it his father sitting in the stands? And he said, I gave you the thumbs up. He said, next kid gets up, he hits the ball, and he said, my son takes off, goes to second base. He said, first place he looks isn't to see if he's getting the approval of his teammates, isn't seeing if he's getting the approval of his coach. He looks at his father in the stands. Thumbs up. He said he did that the whole season. Every move, every at-bat, looking for the approval of Father in the stands. As you and I go through life, there are all kinds of places that will be tempted to look for approval. All kinds of directions that will be tempted to see if people are liking us and approving of us, and if we're on their team. But the one place that Jeremiah 1 reminds us to look, and there's really only one place, is to get that approval from our Heavenly Father, who again has given us that in Jesus Christ. And so Jeremiah says, God, I am only a child. God says, look my way. Fortified city. Thumbs up. God, I am only a child. Jeremiah, look my way. Iron pillar. Thumbs up. God, I am only a child. Jeremiah, look at me. Bronze wall. Thumbs up. I don't know what third word you walked in here with this morning, but an intimate, inward, intentional connection with God is going to give us all the difference. It's going to make all the difference. Purpose. Let's pray together. Father God, we just thank you for your word, where we can open it and turn to it and see men and women, just ordinary men and women, like us, who become intimately connected with you. And from that flows purpose, from that flows meaning, from that flows ministry, from that flows new third words, new identities. And Lord, we thank you that we're not on a stage having to perform for your approval. We're not having to audition to be a recipient of your love and of your grace. That's already come to us in Jesus Christ. So Lord, just draw us close to you, so that the word of Scripture that talks about your being in us and us being in you, man, that just happens. That's real. That's who we are and how we live. And from that comes all things. Oh, in Jesus' name, the vine, to whom we are the branch, we pray.